Okay, good morning, Rosewood. Morning. Welcome to our July Leadership Live. We are live in the Hive today for a very good presentation to start our Q3. As everyone here knows, we like to start our Leadership Lives with our why. Can anyone in the audience say that by heart? Let's see some hands. Who can recite it? We have a prize.
Yeah. No, there you go.
Good job, David.
Good job. See us the marketing.
Yeah, come see marketing after this.
We have a $25 gift card.
Yeah. So as
everyone always has a chance.
We are starting our Q3 today, which is change management for leaders. Sorry.
No, you're good. For Q2, we actually had 30 people complete Q2. Those have been on the newsletter, so if your name's on there, congrats. Pins are going out this afternoon for Q2. If you feel like you missed one or didn't miss any of the Q2 sessions, reach out to us. We can take a look at a list. They're also on YouTube, so you can rewatch Q1 or Q2 sessions. Submit that question that's in the end of the YouTube video, and we'll put your name on there. As we said last year, there's prizes at the end of each all quarter. So just reach out to marketing and see if we can get your name on that list. But yeah.
And with that, we will introduce today's topic, Change Management 2.0 for Leaders, as well as our guest speaker.
Which we have Dr. Everett Farah, who's been with us since the start of Rosewood Academy. It was called ProVantage, ProVU, and we rebranded after the Rosewood family company, so now it's called Rosewood Academy. But Dr. Everett Farah, the floor is yours. You're going to present Tarence.
All right. Good morning, Rosewood. I've never had a... So I'm excited to be able to present my good friend, one of my favorite people in the world, really, Dr. Tarence Lauchiè. I have known him for about 38 years or so, 37, 38 years. He actually, once upon a time, was my boss. So I was an intern for him a long time ago. We've been business partners. We've been good friends. He has done presentations and workshops for me in a number of settings. And again, I'm just glad to know him. I've learned a lot from him, whether it comes to parenting or presenting or church, all of the above. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in front of you. I'm just, again, it's an honor, it's a privilege to present him. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here today for the first time in this building, live in the Hive. So I've seen this space online several times, and now it's so great to see it in person. So, and thank you all, Rosewood, for the generosity you've shown to us at the business school and for the warm reception you keep giving us time after time for Leadership Live. So having said that, Dr. Tarence Lauchiè.
I'm going to figure out how to do this in a matter of seconds, right? But while we are applauding, can you give yourselves a great big hand? Can you hear me down here? Is that going to be okay? Antonio and Jay treat us like kings, of course. I was here at 6 a.m. and they were, no, it wasn't that early. But I got here a little early. What's that? Yeah, I know. Well, when I got here, Jay was on his way. No, Antonio was on his way out to get, is it called Biscuitville or Biscuit? I think we ought to applaud that alone. Because those were the best biscuit sliders I have ever had. In fact, I probably never had any. Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you, Dr. Fubara, for the introduction. We have known each other for years and years and years. In fact, our wives actually were friends first, I believe, and they still keep in contact and in touch with one another on that social level, but we're Spartans. We come from Michigan State University territory. So if you ever hear about Michigan and Michigan State, just say go green, go white, and you'll be all right with me. Thanks for such a warm reception. This building is phenomenal. This space called the Hive, I think, just makes me feel like I'm really special. So you guys didn't have to decorate all this stuff for me, right? One of the things that stands out most to me, and I know I only have a short period of time, I'd love to stay for days, literally, is the mission statement and the values that's on the wall. In some companies, you don't see it on the wall, nor do you see it on the faces of the people. Many of you over the last 8 years, I've seen your faces online. Being able to see you in person makes all the difference in the world, because now not only are those words on a wall, but I can see them in your faces. I can see those words in conversations and the introductions that I've had so far. For those who are still online, too bad for you, you missed out. But let's give them a hand. Let's applaud them for listening online. Maybe they couldn't make it today, but I'm excited about the topic. I'm excited about the subject matter, and I want to leave some time for Q&A, if that's okay. I want to leave some time for Q&A. Thank you so much to the leadership team. This place is awesome. I brag about you often about this one client that I have that, and I can fill in the blanks in so many ways to talk about how you're unapologetic about your values and your beliefs, but you're also a very empowering organization where people can be who they are. And that combination spells success every single day. And you might be doing okay on your bottom line. I still see some smiles in some of the leadership faces. So your bottom line, which we'll talk a little bit about today as well. Now, just like online, I have a tendency to talk really fast. So I'll repeat whatever it is. She's going, yep, that's true. What I'll do is I'll repeat myself, but I'll try to rephrase it. So if ever I'm saying something and you don't quite catch what he's saying, I'll slow down, but then I'll usually say it in another way or reframe it, or I'll say it in a way that we can better understand it, or I'll somehow use an example. And my hands and my arms and my face and all of that should coincide. By trade, I am an instructor, a professor, a teacher of communication, and of course, education. So every classroom setting where there are people on the other end of it, I look for those opportunities to see your eyes light up. Those opportunities for you to take the information and immediately apply it, or maybe even text a family member and go, see, I told you I was right, Tarence said it. So feel free to engage that way. That's the advantage of being present as online with technology. Technology is fun and technology is our friend. Everybody say that with me. Technology is our friend. So we're going to rely a little bit on that. I don't know where Antonio got that picture from, but somehow I'm always caught with my mouth in motion, saying something and speaking and talking, right? So over the years, I've had the opportunity to talk about this subject from a personal perspective. From a personal perspective, because growing up on the east side of Detroit, anybody from Detroit in the room? Rarely I'll go anywhere and there's not a Detroiter in the room. Growing up on the east side of Detroit, didn't have a lot of privileges, just kind of made my way through the grit of Detroit. Detroit's making this major comeback, but I experienced a lot of change. And I know what change is like from both the personal perspective as well as academics, business, work, and all the things that we all bring with us. You do realize you brought with you everything that you've experienced. You brought with you all of the life experiences and all of the changes that you've gone through to your current position. And you were probably hired because of your resilience and your ability to survive under what circumstances that you experienced, or to innovate and to navigate change. Change is a constant. It's all around. For a moment about technologies, processes, people, ideas, and methods. They all change. There's this rumor that AI might take over. Anybody ever hear that? Well, AI could ever take over, considering there are people even at the root of AI. There's got to be somebody that writes the programs, writes the code, or gives the information to AI. And AI is not some ominous force, it's artificial intelligence, which could also be an oxymoron, right? So think for a moment about change with something as simple as AI or as complex as AI. How many have kind of tested out AI? Maybe some chat, GPT, or some of those other ones. What was your take on it? Good, bad? What do you think? I see one thumbs up. 60% persuaded. Anybody 100%? Is there any AI in this room right now? Are you a cyborg and we don't know it? Don't tell. If you're not human, don't tell me. Well, the reason why I say that is because regardless of what we may experience in the way of change, whether it's technology, whether it's trends, whether it's business practices, there will always be people involved, which means that people are either the catalysts for change or the victims of change. We either get to catalyze it or we get to respond to it because it is happening. And it is inevitable. In fact, one of the workshops that I do around change, I have people chant this mantra: change is good. Come on, say it with me. Say it again. Come on, again. All right, throw your hands in the air. Like change is good, right? All the ladies in the house, change is good. Well, think for a moment about how we can force ourselves into a mantra such as that and still somehow have resistance on the inside. Somehow still feel like, change is good as one that has to change. Or change is good as long as I don't have to be inconvenienced, or change is good as long as it doesn't hurt that much. Or do I still have my job at the end of the day? Because sometimes when we hear change in corporate settings, we think it's going to be some losses. Or anybody remember this is going to hurt me more than it hurt you? Yeah, because change was good, right? Think for a moment about how this session will give you an opportunity to practicalize some tools for navigating change, both in your personal and your professional life. I like the in-person opportunity because, like I said, it's nothing like people. I've traveled to multiple countries around the world doing this, some other things, and I found that wherever it is that I got to, there were people. There were people who I'd never met before. And guess what? People usually do what? They people. People are people in. In fact, there are people in this room right now without even knowing that they're people in. People are people like they've never people before. You're going to go home, and if you live with anybody, you're going to find out that they're a people too, right? And people is that element that I'd like to keep in the forefront of your mind when we start thinking about change. The session's objectives include, of course, engaging the internal dialogue about managing change, as well as addressing and navigating what's next. Not who's next, what's next. What is different than who? Because what can be inanimate objects, but who requires people? Who requires both those who are navigating or the catalysts of change, and then those who are either victimized or responsive to change. Anybody ever feel victimized by change? Just a few people. Anybody ever feel like you are the change agent? And you got a big C on your chest under there. Change is here. Well, at any given time, we may feel victorious, or we may feel victimized by change. We may feel triumphant, or we may feel like we're under the trials of change. What if we expanded our thoughts in just accepting the fact that change exists? And it's up to us to decide on how to understand stages of change, perhaps to guide us through transitions, and maybe even communicating how change effectively can be good for our lives so we can minimize the resistance of that. How many leaders in the room? Managers, trainers, perhaps people that, you got to introduce change constantly. Think for a moment that in a nursery where there are a lot of babies, change is good, right? Unless, of course, you're the one who's got to do the changing. I saw a sign in a nursery once above, it was at a church, and above the sign where all these little babies were, it says, "We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed." For those of you who are scriptures, you understand what that means, right? We will all be changed at some point. And so we embrace the concept or the idea. How do we prepare for that? How do we get ready for change? Change management initiatives have become a business discipline driving the bottom line results through change in systems and in behavior. Remember, I mentioned the people are people in kind of thing, and that's where behavior. We can respond to change, we can initiate change, but somewhere in the middle is navigating change. And navigating change is not that difficult because we have the capacity to do it. Although sometimes our capacity is limited, and in some cases, most capacities don't start until after the second or third cup of coffee. So capacity we have. Ability to navigate, probably, because at the end of the day, we ultimately are impacted by change. So we have to think for a moment about maybe the reality of change. Navigating change is difficult, and it must be an intentional effort among organizational team members, not just leaders, or not just those victims who have to respond to change, if that's still you, but everybody who's a team member. Team member. That's an interesting word because it literally oozes off of the walls, no pun intended, that this is a team-focused organization. It's team-oriented. No person is an island. There's no one superhero in the room, no matter how good you feel about yourself. We can't do it without you. And you can't do it without us. And it's an us mentality, from what I understand, as opposed to me mentality. It's a we, not a me. Does that sound familiar? Think for a moment about how, if change is something that requires an us or we, what about those people who tune into WIIFM as a radio dial? Anybody remember radios? I mean, now there's streaming services that have replaced all of that, right? Dr. Fubara mentioned to me in the preview. He said there might be some people who may not subscribe to the whole radio thing. You know, it's this box and there's this dot. Okay, you're too young. We've got 5 generations alive right now in the workplace, 4 or 5 in any given workplace. Let's take a quick test here. You got any boomers in the room? I'm a boomer. There's 2 of us. Well, welcome to the room. Stay seated. Stay seated. I know it's kind of hard getting up every now and then, right? And then after boomers, you got the Xers, right? Any Xers in the room? I'm half Xer, half boomer. I was born at the very cusp. And then after that, you got Gen X, Y, Z, or millennials. There they are. There they are. Millennials, like, I knew they wouldn't get it right. They couldn't get it right. How many millennials in the room? Large portion. And then there's Gen Z, right? Any Gen Z? You're Z-ish, right? Here's your first job, right? Congratulations. I'm teasing because what happens is that all the generations usually compete. For some reason, even though we're all here and we bring the wisdom of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, those that look at us strange because our birthdays start with the 19-somethings just don't understand. They don't understand that, yes, we were born and educated in the 1900s, but without the 1900s, we wouldn't have the new millennium. So when we think about how the what's in it for me factor kicks in, the beginning of change process is important, and showing the affected parties how change will improve their environment will initiate the process on a positive note. But most people are still saying, well, what's in it for, what do I get out of it? Why should I be so quick to adapt to this change? What does this change do for me? And while there's no me in we, people still have a tendency to be self-preservationists from their generational lens, from their perspective. As long as I can have my Wi-Fi, I'm good to go. And then others are going, well, as long as I have a pen and pencil or pencil and paper, I'm good to go. I mean, we don't go all the way back to, like a chisel and, a hammer, but there are those of us who believe in longhand writing. Do you know they don't teach cursive writing in elementary school anymore? But then again, has anybody ever not made it in life because they couldn't write in cursive? I mean, but they're trying, because it's novel. Actually, it's a conspiracy. Anything you take away from society is what people want more of. Seriously, think for a moment. Anything you remove from the mainstream of popularity eventually becomes an anomaly. It's sort of like the throwback idea, or retro is what they call it. I call it just hang on to it and eventually it'll come to use again. So when we think about when people have to say, does this work for me? Does it fit? What is it? How does it apply to my job every single day? How will it impact us? What are we doing now? Somebody said to me one day, you are a forward thinker and you are somebody who always thinks outside of the box. My response was, what box? My response was, what do you mean forward thinking? I mean, is there any other way? There's backwards thinking, and then there's forward thinking. Think about our words and how we choose to use words like feedback versus maybe feed forward. What if during a change conversation, you implemented the change or introduced the change, talked about the change, had a follow-up, that's another key term, follow up, not follow down, a follow-up meeting to get some feed forward as to how the change is going. You see how I chose those words? That's one of the ways that we tune the dial to where everybody can appreciate what's being played, and it's not just WIIFM. It's not what's in it for me, it's what's in it for us, or how do we benefit from this. So I'm kind of softly introducing the concept or the idea of how there are influencing factors about change. One of the influencing factors, of course, would be the nature of the change. How does this change impact us? And is it immediate change? Is it over time change? Is it seasonal change, temporary change, permanent change, inevitable change? I remember once I was being asked to go and relocate my role in another city. And the person in charge came to me and says, I wanted to talk to you about your imminent departure from your current role. Imminent departure? That means change was happening with or without me, right? And so I imminently got myself together and decided to make the relocation. And so thinking about how the nature of the change frames how you respond to it. The organizational context for the change is often limited in scope, which means if it only comes from the organizational leadership, only the organizational leaders understand the value of it. But what if change came from within the organization? What if change started at what we call, baby boomers, the grassroots level? And that's a term, right? They say, what's grassroots? Is that legal? You know, think for a moment about how at the very base of any large movement of change are people from within the organization, as opposed to someone from the outside coming in making the change. Also, when we think about the employee's personal situation, how is it impacted? It does influence whether or not you're willing to go with the change. Now, if we were to say everybody on this side of the building is going to be relocated to this side, the other side of the building, there'll be some kicking and screaming, maybe some dragging of the feet, as they would say. But ultimately, I've been in other offices before. Let's move the stuff to another space. But when we start talking about relocating people to a whole nother state, maybe even a country, what's involved there? You start thinking about how the situation impacts the individual personally, and it could give you a clue as to how willing or how obstinate they might be about the change. And then, of course, what motivates the individual to accept the change? What do I get out of it? Now, it's hard to talk about the what do I get out of it without considering, again, the WIIFM radio station. What kind of music do you like? What's your favorite music? Yacht rock. It's the kind of rock you listen to on a yacht.
And I have no yacht.
And you have no yacht. It's in your mind, though, right? It's sort of like the Pilates fitness stuff, right? I'm listening to stuff in my mind, just doing it, right? I get it. What about yours? What's your favorite? Praise and worship. I was listening to some this morning. Yeah, I mean, I was almost late because I got into it, right? So I was driving down the highway and somebody was obviously listening to praise and worship because he was like, I was like, keep your hands on the wheel. It is the best way to start your day. Well, you think for a moment about how what motivates me may or may not motivate you. What motivates you may or may not motivate the next person. I mean, we do share in common. How many like, praise and worship music? That's good to know. I can tell you there's only a few rooms I've ever stood in and got that response. And that's a blessing. That is a blessing to be among people that tune in and listen to some of the same music you listen to. I'm going to check out the yacht rock. There's like a gospel version of that, You can make it whatever you want, right? I mean, if I get a yacht, I'm happy, right? It's like, praise the Lord. So we can fine tune the change. We can fine tune the difference. We can fine tune the fact that we may not all have the exact same taste or appetite as it relates to what's next. But if we all stay together, we can get there collectively. Think for a moment about how when we look at change, it requires a deeper understanding. It's a concept, and understanding its components on an individual level can really help us to relate as an organization. So if I can understand my perspective and my response to change, or how I innovate change. I mean, think for a moment, you can put a lot of words in front of change. There's respond to change, innovate change, cause change, put the fire out because of change. There's a lot of roles we can play in the change process. And when we talk about organizational management or organizational change management, just what you think about it, it's what others think about it and how it impacts the whole group. So the influences on change is that there's no organization or individual that is an island. I'm glad I'm in good company because you understand this phrase that no person is an island. No one lives unto himself and no one dies unto himself, which means that we're connected in some type of way. External forces are always influencing and interacting with the very existence of our being. Stuff that we can control, stuff that we can't control. Things that are within our scope, things that are outside of our scope. And so we have to take that into consideration. The key influencers that have impact on how change is received really starts inside. There's some stages, though, that we go through. Most common reaction, a lot like the stages of grief. Anybody familiar with that? Yeah. They don't get a chance to, we don't get a chance to decide which one of those stages we're going to experience today or where we are in the stages. Sometimes they just kind of hit us. Some of us have had loss, and because of that loss, we experience grief later, or we're in the process of it, or the throes of it, as they would say. I had to look that up. I had to look up, what does it mean to be in the throes of something? Well, that's antiquated English. That just simply means the fight, the struggle, in the midst of it, in the process of doing and being at the same time. There is a clue that I like to leave with everybody, that we are humans being, not humans done. Humans being, not humans was. So we're being. And so when we go through these stages, it's normal. And we can embrace the idea that somebody might be in denial when we say change. Oh no, I would never do that. Or somebody could be in resistance, like, how dare you? I'll fight for the status quo. And then you've got people who get angry and they literally become responsive in a defensive way. And anger is a really dangerous state of being. Yeah. I mean, in some cases, anger can be terminal for the person that's angry or the person who's a victim of somebody who's angry. Another stage, of course, would be indifference, like, well, whatever, doesn't matter. Who cares? Who knows? It's always something. Well, that indifference can be dangerous as well, but we think for a moment that sometimes people are different because they don't know where else to land their perspective of change. And then finally, of course, the most celebrated position would be acceptance. Once we accept the change, sometimes we realize it wasn't as bad as we thought, or it won't hurt as long as we think, or perhaps it was the best thing that I had ever decided to do. Leaving the dictates of the city of Detroit to go to Michigan State University was the best thing that I could have ever done. It was an interesting thing. I was a 17-year-old kid who had experienced a great deal of abstract poverty. You don't know what abstract poverty is. It's just what it sounds like, abstract. There's no form there, but it's poverty in every area. Having experienced homelessness, having to take care of my mom and my two younger sisters after my father left. All of those experiences changed me, but not in a bitter way. To accept the change that I experienced over years. Of course, it didn't happen overnight, and I wasn't 18 when it happened, or 19, or 20. But I got married at 23, and life changed for me. How many married in the room? How many glad you're married in the room? No, don't know. It's fine. How many think otherwise? It's like change is good. Change. Well, it has people that you're with and how you embrace change, whether at work or at home. Remember, this is twofold, both personal as well as practical. Leading and managing change in the workplace, though, think for a moment. Being prepared, planning well, and being surrounded by a good team will make any decision easier, especially if those people are helping to point toward the change. Do any of these people look familiar in these slides? Marketing's done a great, unfortunately, right? That's the best example I could ever come up with, right? Somebody's warming up. I think about leading change, and I think we need some tools. Got to have some instruments, got to have some practical elements that will help in the change process. Here's some tools, and they don't seem to be foreign to you, but I want you to look at them from a different perspective. What is the definition of communication? Anybody know? Is talking involved? Sometimes, but not always. Listening is absolutely involved. Feedback or feed forward, maybe. What about noise? Interruptions. That plays a part, right? I mean, if I were to do like this, you hear some noise in your headphones. But communicating is a two-way transactional process. Now, this, of course, could be a meme, right? Two-way transactional process that involves a message, a messenger, a receiver, feedback, and a loop. Now, it took maybe about $42,000 on an undergraduate degree at Michigan State University for me to come up with that. But communication is a tool or an instrument that, if perfected and used well, can help us when it comes to change. Because to a hammer, everything is a nail, right? And so if we learn communication as a tool that's flexible, a tool that can help us, we can use it in introducing the change. Education, a little bit different than training, and I'll kind of put these two together because to educate means to educe, means to pull out of, it means to draw from a base of knowledge or understanding. You do have to know something before you go to school to get educated. I mean, can you imagine me as, you know, a 4-year-old on my way to school going TARENCELAUCHIE, and then my phone number, my address, walking to school because you had to know something in order to be introduced to education. Training's a little bit different. Training is you ought to know better. And so we turn you or change you into the regiment of learning and understanding. So if these tools are used properly when it comes to change, we don't insult anyone by assuming that they're uneducated in the field or the subject. In fact, we draw on it and we educe or come from that base. Training, shape it, turn it, move it in the direction in which it is now uniformed. And then, of course, there's flexibility. I kind of described that in just using the difference between training and education. We have to be flexible when it comes to change. Flexibility is not just your physical mobility, but it has to do with your psychological mobility, your cultural competency, your emotional intelligence. Does that sound familiar at all? Emotional intelligence? I like emotional intelligence over artificial intelligence any day, right? When we think about these tools, we also want to consider that premium, of course, of all of these would be the lines of communication, reassuring that your team is there and that you're there for them and that they have what they need. And in order to do that, we've got to communicate. We have to communicate what it is that we're attempting to show or illustrate. What are some potentials? What's the success factor? What's the failure factor? The what if. Anybody ever start your day with what if? I mean, think for a moment. What if today is going to be a good day? Well, it's off to a good start so far, wouldn't you say? Yeah, right. What if you didn't feel like it was a good day? Could you still make yourself believe it can get better? Because the day's not over until the what ifs stop. So don't stop the what ifs when it comes to communicating change. There are pushbacks that we get oftentimes. Notice the broken light bulb here. The light bulb, of course, indicates the idea, the innovation, the revelation, the understanding, the aha moment. Well, sometimes there's pushback within organizations and teams because people don't quite understand why we're doing what it is that the change brings. Sometimes people resist because they've been down that road before and it's not my first rodeo kind of thing, right? But providing employees with some choices that still fall within the spectrum of the intended change could eliminate breakage and cause us to become a little more flexible, which means that we can give options or choices within a framework. Notice these are invisible boundaries. I mean, if you can have air quotes, you can have invisible boundaries, right? Invisible in the sense that there's some things on the spectrum that we can accept. There's some things outside of the spectrum that we can't. There's some things pre-spectrum that we need to understand, and there's some things post-spectrum that we're going to have to be willing to believe is there when we get there. So we've got to have some flexibility when it comes to that because there'll be pushback. Gaining support from your team members is important. It's vital to make sure that all the stakeholders and the employees are on board with any change. Would you agree? What would be the antithesis of this? What would be the opposite? What do you think? What's that? Unity, that's the word. Think for a moment about if the people in the ship don't want to row the ship's not going to move. And mutiny happens mentally. It's not just, oh, we're on strike or we quit. No, sometimes there's passive aggressive behavior, resistance. That is unspoken, but impacts us all. So we have to be conscientious about that by gaining support. Can I count on you for this? And that's a yes or no question. Notice in my what if I ask, what percentage of support can I get from you? And if we start with 60%, I'm more than halfway there. And if I said, weigh in and tell me just how much of this you're going with, and you said 70%, I said, great, you can go help me get those other folks. So think for a moment about getting buy-in and gaining support being part of the work. Gathering data is important. Identify the pros and cons, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, prior to making the decision. As opposed to starting with, this is what we're going to do, let's kind of back into it. Explore what's going right, what's going wrong, analyze perhaps a couple of opposing positions and tell why those didn't work, or perhaps even give people the option to think about opposing positions. Anybody ever buy a new car in here? Kind of new car, used car? I probably got a lot of Dave Ramsey students in here. It's like, you never buy a new car, right? Well, if you buy a new car, I wouldn't suggest just buying the first new car you see. I would suggest maybe testing out some cars, and maybe even cars that you really like, cars that you don't like as much, but you need to know why you don't like it. But looking at options and analyzing even opposing options oftentimes helps us in embracing the change concept or the idea of change. And then, of course, there's this terminology called appreciative inquiry. Anybody familiar with this? It's really a approach where you look for the best in something, and then you think about adding value to it, as opposed to looking at what's wrong, thinking that you're going to tear it down. Or that didn't work, get rid of it. No, there were some things about it that worked. And so appreciative inquiry helps us to navigate change from a perspective of looking at it first before just simply throwing in the idea or the concept of doing something different. Now, I am a proponent of doing something different in order to get something you've never had. Because if you continue to do the same thing and expect different results, you've just defined insanity. And so inquiring or digging in, it's like, what's good about what we have and what's not working with what we have? It really means to seek an understanding, to use a process based on proactive questions, open ends, use a whole lot. Somebody what they think, as opposed to do you agree, makes all the difference in the world. What's limiting about the questions, do you agree? What's limiting? Just a yes or no. And if I ask the question in a different way, how do you feel about it? Gives you an opportunity to weigh in now. It gives you, and your nonverbals usually tell off whether or not you agree. Am I correct? Think for a moment about how when we're looking through the lens of someone's acceptance or someone's rejection, we can often tell before they even open their mouth whether they're good with it. So there's some 4 stages here I want to share with you, and I'm kind of moving through quickly because I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. The 4 stages of change implemented, easily remembered through these Ds. There is the discovery stage, where you recognize something's got to change, something needs to be different, or I saw an idea that may work for us. Notice so that's a different approach. This is really going to changes. Now, while we had the different perspectives, discovery is still where we landed. We discovered that change is something that we've got to do. Let's dream about it. Let's do the what ifs. Let's dream on what if we didn't change? It turns into a nightmare. Or what if we changed and we had all the resources that we ever needed and we never had to ask for anything, but we're able to just celebrate every single day because we embraced this change. Then we wake up to reality, right? Because there are going to be some challenges. There's the design of change. There's got to be some intentional, map it out, let's lay it out, count the cost. No one goes to war without first sitting down counting the cost. Think for a moment about how the design of any infrastructural change determines the success and longevity of that change. And then, of course, there's destiny. That's the dream far off, beyond the dream that comes right after discovery. Destiny oftentimes is confused with destination. Sometimes we think of destiny and destination as the same thing, when destination is you've arrived at your location. Destiny is you're here now. And here now is fine because there then might be better. Are you following me? And so we have to think destiny when it comes to change. How does this fit in the big picture of destiny? I remember the career moves that I made, and Dr. Fubar and I have made some similar career moves over the years. And I can remember leaving one job for another. And the question was, how will this employment position move you closer to your destiny than if you stayed? Or how does working here help you in moving toward your destiny than if you were somewhere else? So we think about destiny in these stages, and I sense that we'll be able to come back and talk a little bit about that one. As we wrap this up, I think about alignment. That's a key word too, not just a buzzword of the 2000s, but it's absolutely necessary to have a concept of aligning people with the organization's issue or need, and also allowing them to see that they are working together toward an important cause. The alignment. It's usually a term that's being brought up when the vision is being cast at the beginning of the year. And guess what? Alignment is just as significant in the third quarter as it is in the first, second, fourth quarter of the year. So that's important. Alignment. I like that image that goes along with the word alignment. Let's throw in a dash of emotion. I mean, I'm not a very emotional guy. Probably couldn't tell that, right? But I think it's important for our emotional intelligence to be balanced, because change in organizations doesn't happen without people. The human element cannot be downplayed. It's okay to bring the bad news in a good way. It's okay for us to take a few moments and lament something that we didn't necessarily think we were going to have to get rid of or lose. And then we can, in a healthy way, move to the next phase. Using the facts are important. How many fact people do I have? You're a fact-oriented individual. All right. Feeling-oriented people? Sort of, kind of. Is it because you were intimidated by all the fact people that were in here? Is it because facts and bottom line matters? Your feelings, you can check them at the door, right? Well, it's kind of hard when you walk into a company and the first thing you see in the front door evokes my feelings. You know how I feel about that statement? It inspires me. I mean, if I worked here, I'd probably be bouncing around, in my high I behavior. I mentioned I behavior because I think many of you are familiar with the DISC profile. Yes, DISC. High D means dominance and your decisiveness and your directness. I is your influence and enthusiasm and excitement in a room. The S is your steadiness and your ability to keep the status quo together. And then the C is your conscientiousness. You want the facts. So facts and feelings oftentimes fight one another on the spectrum of change. If you utilize your DISC strength, which I like to call your superpower, and you couple it up with somebody else's, and then you coupled it with somebody else's, and you've coupled it with somebody else's, eventually you'd create this nice network of emotion balanced with facts. So if there's a fact-oriented person sitting next to you, you can ask them the what, the why, the when, and the how. But if there is a feeling person next to you, you ask them who, and they'll tell you who. And then they can respond why and what and how. So you can see there's a need or a balance for both the facts and the feelings. Resiliency is important because even though it's a whole separate subject and we can do an entire topic on that, resiliency is the capacity to absorb high levels of change while maintaining a level of performance and displaying minimal dysfunctional behavior. Break that down into modern English. It means it means that you endured COVID and you're still here. It means you endured remote work and you're still here. It means that you endured wearing masks with people that you really want to see the smiles on their faces, but you're still here. It means that you endured a lot of change and we're still enduring a lot of change. And if we were to give a physical image of resiliency, it's like a rubber band being expanded and yet bouncing back into its full propensity. And so I think resiliency is built based on enduring change. You can quote me on that. It's the absolute characteristic. It isn't an absolute characteristic. Rather, it's a combination of the traits that vary in degrees. This image sticks out to me because this flower is growing up through the crack of the concrete. The fault in the concrete seems to be a negative, but there's a little bit of sunshine that came out of it. But what speaks more clearly to me is the fact that this flower endured all of the seasons necessary in order to come forth and bloom, literally bloom. Because where there is a flower, there's usually going to be some fruit. Anybody know that to be true? All right. And so that flexibility that is built during resiliency helps to make the shift necessary during the process. Being flexible on personal and social levels is critical. It's critical, specifically for the person who's leading the change. Can't be my way or the highway because there are quite a few highways. Would you exist? I mean, would you exist? Would you agree? Exactly, that there's so many highways. So you can't be my way or the highway. It can't be the only way, but it could be my way right now, maybe your way tomorrow, my way, or show me a better way. There are alternative routes. So the leader really has to take the responsibility of being flexible in order to create a flexible space or environment for change. If everything's rigid and stringent and hard, static, oftentimes things break. You don't want it broken. Sometimes you need it to bend toward change. And so here are the 5 steps, and then I'll pause after these for the leader and the individual to navigate change. I could take a few moments, read those, and I want you to pick one out that you identify with. Pick one of those steps that you go, I kind of like that one, or I can relate to that one. Because that's a lot of information for one slide. I'm going to leave it up, but I'd like for you to grab an elbow partner. Don't grab anybody's elbow. Just the person sitting next to you, to your left or your right, kind of pair off. There might be a group of 3 right here, but the 2 of you guys can work together. You 2, you'd have to work with your inner self because you got on headphones, right? The 2 of you guys are already sitting together. You guys are sitting together. The 2 of you, go ahead and share your the one that sticks out to you as being one of the 5 easy steps in order to navigate change. Go ahead. 2-minute exercise. Time starts now. Share with your partner. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow. That was easy. So what do you think? You guys share some things in common? Let's hear a few of your comments. Tell off on the person that you were talking to. Tell me what you heard. I'll start with you. What's your name? Yes. Hi, Elise. I think I remember seeing you online, Elise. Not? So you're the new kid on the block?
I am.
Well, this is my first day, so hey. Well, Elise, what did you hear?
So Kelly and I were talking, and Kelly had picked step 4. And I guess was just sharing that she thinks it's very valuable to know other people's perspectives, and especially when we're discussing change, to know their point of view so that you can see how is this going to affect that person.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of walking a mile in someone else's shoes, and you're always going to learn something.
I like that. Sounds like empathy. Absolutely. What did you hear?
So Elise picked step 3. She likes the idea of reframing. A lot of times when you're like, I want to go for a run, but I decided to sleep on the couch. It's like, I wanted to go for a run, and I also wanted to be on the couch, and not like, making it a negative thing, I think. And so I really related to that too. It reminded me of like when you're running late, instead of saying, I'm sorry, I'm late, thanking the person for waiting for you. Like just reframing how you're thinking about something, looking at something, leaving yourself open to 2 things being true at once.
I like that. The concept of being able to take a nap on the couch and do your run, it's all in your mind. I'm already running that half marathon that I'm training for. All in my mind. But no, I agree. 2 things can be true at the same time. I appreciate your time and I'm sorry that I was late. Those two things. Great. Those are good. Let's hear some from the back. Way back there. Who do we have?
Thank you. So Andy chose number 1 because he appreciates playing the devil's advocate and just kind of trying to look at things from a different side. So that's where he's most comfortable kind of in this space.
Terrific.
Do you want to?
Yeah,
Andy?
and
Okay.
Stacy picked number 2 because she really likes to go into change to, get everyone's opinion before forming that judgment and stuff. And we kind of talked about one of the challenges is sometimes like people don't come with an opinion, so you don't always get, their input as much to the level as you would hope for. So, but definitely understand that too.
Great. It's amazing how these pairs paired off kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4 type thing. Interesting concept and idea is the devil's advocate. Strong term, but I get it. Go find somebody who doesn't see it like you see it and ask what they think. Not that you're going to be persuaded or proselyted somehow into believing what they believe, but it's always good to get another person's perspective that's opposite of yours to make sure to either 10 toes down or maybe you can tweak your system of embracing that change. Okay.
He picked step 2 as well. I don't like change naturally, so I'm resistant. I'm nervous about change, and so in order to overcome my just sort of natural tendency to not want to do it, it helps to find different perspectives and especially opposing perspectives.
Sure. There's a lot of value in opposing perspectives when you have, friction because you want to move. That's how automobiles used to run. Now I don't know what's under the hood there, but it used to be the friction of the pistons that were firing based on spark plugs. Notice the terminology. All of those things make a difference, and reframing helps a whole lot. So these are good. We got time for another one.
Kind of where you were speaking about the difference between fact-based people compared to feeling-based people, kind of being a good point of view, especially in the workplace. And one of the ones that we were discussing was we have a Dropbox that has several ways of doing it, like a list of, how a cheat sheet of sort,
Yeah.
basically go through the process, and then being able to listen to feedback and then still get the training and the feedback from like senior coordinators and people that have been doing this for a little bit longer,
Mhm.
and how it's so welcome. So you're getting a good feeling about a particular procedure that's step by step.
Sure.
And I think that was probably, I think we're both of us were talking. I'm a little, she's a lot newer than I am, and it was just a good method of training. And it just kind of reminded me what we were talking about, fact-based compared
Feeling
to
based.
feeling-based. So
Okay, who's the fact and who's the feeling over here?
I think we're both a combination of both. 'Cause
Okay.
it seems like Chloe's very procedural,
Yeah.
and so am I. But it's, it's just, I think that you shouldn't have that as a singular one. It should definitely be a combination of both. People that are extremely fact-based are not going to listen to how that's not going to work because maybe someone feels a little bit differently about
Sure.
it. And people that are all feeling are going to be like maybe letting the feeling come in if they don't like the way the fact is going to go.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Somebody brought it to my attention that feelings don't make money, but how do you feel when you don't have any?
point.
So you need both, right? Yeah, you gotta have both. You gotta have the bottom line, and you gotta have somebody sensing and feeling. Chloe, what were your thoughts? Thanks
So
for sharing.
perspective, it's, I think about perspective. She and I may look at the same thing, but what she sees or pulls out of it may be different from what I pull out
Correct.
of it. But that doesn't say that what I'm pulling out of it is wrong or she's wrong or I'm right or she's right. It's a different perspective. We are seeing it different, even though it's, it's written down on a piece of paper. We may approach it differently based on those perspectives.
Sure.
So, but I like to collaborate because I want to know what she's seeing that I'm not seeing, or vice versa. And maybe her perspective is better in getting to the solution of the issue than mine.
Yes.
So I think you really have to look at a person's perspective,
Yes.
not to say that it's wrong or right, but it's different from yours.
Yes.
And it may be a better perspective
Sure.
than what you're looking at, because maybe you're looking with blinders and they're looking, open-minded. And so you have to look at those different attributes in people. And that's why I love working for this company, because everybody brings a gift. Everybody has something different that they bring to the table.
Yeah.
And so I like to listen to the different, perspectives of a certain situation.
Thank you for sharing that with Chloe. I think it's important for us to consider what she's saying, that different is different. Different's not right or wrong, left or right. Different is different. But there are some absolutes even in our differences. And those absolutes can be negotiated. They can be adjusted. They can be multiplied. They can be reduced. They can be endured. That's how I'm choosing words to describe process of change. By nature, it's not something that we just wait for change. No, we respond to change, and some people have a positive attitude about it, and they feel okay. And some people go, I'm looking for that. My wife and I have been married. We're still newlyweds. We've been married for 38 years. And we are so different than each other that you'd be surprised. Like, how did these two ever get together? She looks at life differently. You know how there's this philosophy of the glass being half empty or the glass being half full? She looks at the glass as being half empty. I'm just glad to have a glass. It's a difference. The difference is not I'm half full, she's half empty. No, I went without enough. I understand. But now, solved. That doesn't mean that we're bipolar in a relationship. That we're two biologically opposing different people. That means that our differences complement one another in order to maintain the glass at half empty or half full. But we keep using the glass. And that's how we have to look at the world in which we live, as being the opportunity to see it from another lens. Notice I use the term opportunity. So what if we inverted the word change to be the word opportunity? What if we said change is not bad or change is not good, change is an opportunity? And the root definition of opportunity stems from two words: optical, the way you see it. Well, how do you line up with what you see? That's what an opportunity is. And that's what change could be. I want to wrap this up, see if there are any other questions that you have. I really enjoy being here. This is a really good group. This is a dynamic group of people. What questions do you have, or anything you want to throw at me as we wrap this thing up? Yes, sir.
Question: what percentage of agreement, or I don't know exact words?
How much buy-in? What percentage of buy-in can you give me?
Because as a when we try to go through change, you want to get alignment. And alignment doesn't feel like 60%. It feels like a pin straight to go. If that's very, very new, someone is at 60 already. I like how very quickly aligns in, or basically shared 60 after this initial conversation.
Yeah.
Means that when we get to, once we design it all out, and then we look for less.
Destiny.
Yeah. Then destiny. Like, it's something I'm gonna think about as I'm communicating things to people and asking that question, because it's like 20.
Thanks. That's a great takeaway. Other takeaways or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Your capacity and your ability to change.
Sure. I personally have a belief that we all have a capacity to change and to adapt to change, or we never now. I have the capacity these all things. Now, my capability at home, I may need more information, but I have capacity to change. I have the capacity to get the information. So it's a matter of, so capacity oftentimes comes after the revelation that I'm willing to make the change. Expand to land on my feet when I jump. Does that help? Great. Well, it is, yes, last one.
I just wanted to ask about, thank you, appreciative inquiry.
Yeah.
I enjoy the term and I appreciate how you explained it. Is there a place where we can learn from that concept?
I would suggest if you do Google Scholar's my friend. Anybody know about Google Scholar? There are articles, dissertations, published papers on subjects and topics. So if you go to Google Scholars and you put in appreciative inquiry, you'll find scores and scores of authors on the subject. But it's as much as it is a practice of being able to get people by first appreciating and then inquiring. I don't have an author, one particular author on the subject, but it's a conglomerate of research. But it's Google Scholar, good place to start. With it, appreciative inquiry is something that I now have learned after. I say one word. One word. I want you to think of one word to describe what you can away with you today. Just one word. Meditate on it for a second. Just one word. Not a phrase, not a sentence. Just one word. And I'd like to start at the back of the room, have you toss your one word this way, and we'll end that way. So we'll start back there. Opportunity, that's your one word. How about you? Positivity. Great. Who's next? You guys shout out. Perspective. Perspective. Discover. Great.
Destination.
Destiny. Happiness. What's that? Guidance. Feed forward. You know, I made that word up, but it's okay. Oh yeah. Go ahead. You got destiny. Who's next? What was that? Acceptance. Listen. Perspective. Ability. Yes. Destiny. Destiny's winning, right? Well. Change. I like that. Ability. Other words come in this way. Openness. Flexibility. Inquiry. Reframing. Listening. What if? That's two words, but I get it. I get it. He's a lawyer. That figures. That figures. Great. Oh, last word. Oh, let's get your word. Oh, you. Destination. And transform. My one word is fulfilled. Mission accomplished. Antonio. Maybe visual for you guys. There you go.
Well, that was great. Thank you, Tarence Lauchiè. Another round of applause for him. That was amazing. Better live. It is a lot better live. So, no, that was great. Thank you, Everfraud, for joining us. Thank you for all you guys for joining us for July. Live. Quick thing, if everybody a little bit, to take a group photo, that'd be great. We'll take it up here. We take it as soon as this call's over. But thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thank you for joining Leadership Leadership Live for everyone who is on the call. So thank you. Leadership Live. I'll be left over, and yeah, have a great day.